Hey guys, so I ran into a friend of a friend after class today, and they asked me a question. They're saying that, hey, I have a kid, he's 8 years old, and I want to know whether I should start him off in boxing or BJJ. So it's actually a really good question, and we had a pretty good discussion, but the discussion wasn't really going anywhere until I asked them a very important question. And if you have a child and you want to put them into martial arts, this is a question that you might want to answer too. And the question is, what's the goal? What's the objective? And part of it is like, hey, you know what? I want my kid to grow up with confidence, to grow up with self-discipline, to grow up with, to not be a wimpy kid. And at the same time, to know how to defend themselves and want them to be athletic, want them to be strong, all of those aspirations that any parent would have for their child. So, and I was asking them what was their thinking process, because initially they're looking at like, hey, maybe I should get them into BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then after doing a few years of that, get them to do boxing. And I was asking them, well, what if you were to do both, right? Because if you talk about training, why not have them do both at the same time? In the sense of like certain schools, like for example, the Gracie Baja that I go to in West Chase, especially during the middle, because they have 3 sessions of classes. They have a 6 a.m. class, they have an 11 a.m. class, and then they have a 7 p.m. class, or 6:30 depending on the day. So in the evenings, they have Muay Thai simultaneously with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if you have the option of taking one or the other. And in the morning, same thing. They're overlapping in terms of the timings. The Muay Thai starts at, I think, 6, and the Jiu-Jitsu classes start at 6:30 or vice versa, something like that. However, when it comes to the midday lunchtime classes, they have Muay Thai classes that start at like, I think 11 to 12, and then the Jiu-Jitsu classes go from 12 to 1, something like that, right? So if somebody wanted to take both of those, like that would be the ideal time, and it would make sense for one to do, like if you're going to do a double session, i.e. back to back, you do Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that would work out. Or in this case, this gentleman who's talking about boxing. And so, but he says, like, time and money and all that, limited resources would be a hindrance to that reality. So I was like, okay, well, at the end of the day, your objective is for them to learn confidence. And I'm also looking at it from the perspective of me growing up as a kid. I was about 8 years old when I started training martial arts, initially Taekwondo, and then after a couple of years moved into a new school, where they did a mix of Kyokushin Karate and Taekwondo, and then they got bought out by Tiger Showmans, in which they did Kyokushin Karate starting off, and then they brought in Muay Thai, and then they did some grappling, ground game stuff later on. And so it was just a matter of combining those aspects together, and that became your whole that became your practice, or that's how that was the martial arts you did. But in the case of a child that's already 8 years old and you think about a parent, I'm just like, well, it would be a good idea, and this is and I'm going to give you my reasoning. It would be a good idea to maybe start them off in Muay Thai. And the reason I say this is because, as opposed to Muay Thai versus boxing, right? Because Muay Thai has strikes, it has boxing, it has punches, and rather not boxing, but it has punches, it has elbow strikes, it has knees, it has kicks. So you have, because it's the art of 8 limbs, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, knees 5, other knee 6, foot 7, 8. So that's why it's called Muay Thai. So the fact that you can learn, because I'm personally not in favor of just learning how to punch, I would say you should learn how to punch and kick. And if you can learn how to elbow and knee, awesome. Once you got that down, right, from like say age of like 8, so I would say do that for 4 to 5 years, right? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe 14, make it 6 years, right? And do Muay Thai. And then once they hit the age of 14 or 15, put them into Jiu-Jitsu classes. And the reason I say this is because, generally speaking, the training of a the training of jiu-jitsu classes, when it comes to the ground game kind of stuff, it's a whole different thing. And ultimately, there's really 4 ranks in jiu-jitsu. You got your white, blue, purple, brown, black, right? Now, there's a whole different set of ranking for kids, and if I had a kid and they were less than 8 years old, right? Let's say they were 3 years old. As a 3-year-old, I would definitely put a 3-year-old in jiu-jitsu classes. I would say from the age of 3 to 10, they'd be doing jiu-jitsu. And then I'd bring in Muay Thai probably around the age of 10 to 12 if I was in that case. But now if the kid is already 8 to 10 years old, I would say bring in the striking, right? And so again, this is just my opinion, my thoughts in terms of how I would approach it. And the reason is this: usually, depending on the jiu-jitsu school, if you're a kid and you got your fundamentals down, you're not going to get a blue belt until you turn like anywhere between 16 to 18. That's just the reality. And so that's how the ranking system works. So, however, I will say this, that a kid that's been doing jiu-jitsu for 5 years, by the time they turn, let's say 16 or 18, so let's assume they started jiu-jitsu at 13 years old and they turned 16 to 18, whatever, and then finally they get their blue belt, they're a much better blue belt than somebody who's been doing jiu-jitsu for 2 years and gets their blue belt. So, but that's just a reality. But at the same time, the kind of jiu-jitsu that you would learn as a kid is going to be significantly different than the kind of jiu-jitsu you would learn as an adult, which is not necessarily the case in a martial art like Muay Thai. Because in Muay Thai, it's just 4 techniques. No, I mean, it's 8 techniques, really. In terms of, it's 8 limbs with very different techniques, right? In terms of the punches, you got cross, jab, uppercut, hook. That's 4 techniques right there. And in terms of the elbows, you got elbow up, elbow across, elbow down. That's 3 techniques right there. In terms of your knees, you got your, angling of the knee. In terms of your kick, you got your front kick, you got your low kick, and if you want to throw in some MMA karate stuff, you got your side kick, your spinning back kick, a few of those things that you can kind of throw in there. But ultimately, really, it's the low kick and the front kick that you would have in Muay Thai. And so those are the basic techniques and learning the combinations thereof. But in Jiu-Jitsu, there's so much more variation, there's so much more variability, and the execution of those techniques and how you execute them and the technical level in which you execute them, at least to my understanding, would be different for an adult. And also have to keep in mind, that's the other thing. Let's just say, you're planning for your child's development in martial arts, right? Let's say you get them started as a kid, elementary school, middle school, 8 to 10 years old. They do Muay Thai, turn 14, 15. You get them into Jiu-Jitsu class. And by the time they turn 18, they get their blue belt. Keep in mind now, 18 to 24, those are their formative years. The martial arts that they learn from 18 to 24 will be, and the style that they develop for themselves at that point, with the understanding that you have gained proficiency in the basics of martial arts before that point, is going to be what they make their own. So that's just basically my thought. If it was my kid, I would say at 3 to 4 years old, I'd put them into jiu-jitsu classes. Kids jiu-jitsu, right? And by the time they turn 8 to 10, I start teaching them Muay Thai. And by the time they turn 14 to 15, I would get a little bit more focused on their jiu-jitsu training, not for necessarily for the sense of sport, but more so for the sake of them learning, just genuine self-defense and whatnot. Because I personally don't care for sport that much. I mean, I think it'd be cool to win a few medals, a few competitions, but I don't see it as a career kind of thing, right? I don't even follow the sports stuff. So those are just my thoughts. Hope you found value in that. Let me know if you have any questions. Signing out. See you guys later.